talk with every sip and laugh. Coffee's the fuel, martini's the craft. Conversation swirling in the cool night.
Good morning, Alan.
Evening, Leanne. I'd like to welcome you back to Flat Earth, so to speak.
Thank you. It's good to be, well, it is nice to be back at sea level, but I got to say, my body adjusted very well to altitude, which was surprising.
Well, in that case, I have something for you. Hold on.
Okay. I don't know are you playing a video or sharing something? I can't hear it. I can't hear it come through. What was that?
Climb every mountain.
Oh, is that, yeah, the music didn't come through. So sorry, who's the artist?
That's Audra McDonald.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
That was very, very kind of you to have that queued up.
I just thought the volume coming off the computer would play into my mic here, but I guess it doesn't work that way.
No, I think the technology is so good now that it actually filters out background noise. So
Oh, God.
yeah,
And-
which is really unfortunate. So today's topic is climbing the mountain, and thanks for welcoming me back to Earth. I do have to share a couple of things with you. I'd like to ask a couple of questions. I've got these images here, but so this is Lukla Airport. It is the most dangerous airport in the world because the runway is just so short. And so if the pilots kind of delay a bit, you're off a cliff is basically what happens. I'm sharing this with you because, Alan, you've had some pretty hairy flight scenarios. Did you want to share one with our listeners?
Well, I've been 5 times on airplanes. And in the Caribbean, there's an airport like that where you have to have a special pilot's license. I mean, you could be flying for American. You need an additional special license. And I think it's like that. You come in over the mountains and immediately have to drop. And then going out, you go blasting down the runway and immediately, accelerate up.
Yeah.
But life is short.
Life is short, yes. Let us know where you're joining us from and if you've flown into any hairy airports as well. A couple more photos before we jump into the topic. This was the accommodation, Alan, and this was actually pretty decent sized room. I was sharing a room the whole time. I haven't done that in years. Would you say it's somewhere like this?
Well, yeah, when I was an exchange student, I stayed in a youth hostel in London, which just had mattresses on the floor. And you had to step over people to get to the bathroom. And I said, I'm an exchange student, but I better do better than this in life. Now, where is the bathroom here? Is there an outdoor facility or what?
We actually recalled this place. We named it the Dungeon because, yeah, it was like at the bottom level. It was really cold. There was ice outside. The bathroom was probably, I don't know, 10 feet away. Oh, no, so 20 feet. It stank, Alan. I've never smelled anything so bad in my life. You could smell it in our room. It was horrific. And there was just mess all over the floor. It was like you had to wear hiking boots into this thing, right?
Wow.
Yeah. You've got no idea. Take your own toilet paper. It was the toilet situation. That's probably another Talk the Walk episode. Yeah.
In the Galapagos, they were very careful about the environment. And so you could not dispose of toilet tissue in the toilet. It had to go in a bag. But it was very sanitary, There was no odor or anything. They handled it very well. But I understand what you mean. The funny thing is that when Versailles was built, they didn't build enough latrines. And people were afraid to leave the royal court because they wanted to curry the favor of Louis XIV. And consequently, they would pee in corners and in plants. And the place stank to high heaven because they didn't want to be away from the court.
That is fascinating. Yeah, I get that. Like, we haven't really evolved, have we? It's this.
No.
These fundamental human things. Amy, really great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us for our final Talk the Walk of 2025. Now, Alan, we are talking about climbing the mountain, so it'd be good to dive into this. And you suggested this as a topic, obviously inspired by my recent trip, but you were talking kind of metaphorically as well.
Well, I think what you do is fabulous. I mean, just from the standpoint of achievement, intellectual curiosity, and putting up with the kind of conditions you're talking about and so forth. Most of us aren't climbing mountains. Like if I want to see the top of Kilimanjaro, I'll take a chopper. However, here's a mountain I just climbed of a different type, and I want people to know this. So I've published all these books, multiple languages, multiple editions, and so forth. I have four. I had HAD 4 coming out next year. However, the book I really want to write is a book called The Courage of Your Talent, and it's about self-esteem. So $1 Million Consulting had been rejected 15 times before we finally sold the thing. And nobody wanted this book, The Courage of Your Talent, even with my reputation, right?
Really? I find that interesting.
My agent didn't want to represent it. Wiley didn't want it. Nobody wanted the book. So when I get rejected, I don't get distraught. I get really angry, like when I was fired. I get really pissed off. And so I said about a month ago now, in effect, I'm going to climb this mountain. And so I put together a killer proposal. I sat down. I don't spend time on anything, right?
Yeah.
I spent an hour or two putting together a killer proposal. I talked about books that were doing well in the topic and what I was adding to it. I talked about uniqueness of the book. I created a sort of a psychological, sociological case for low esteem and what had to be done about it, why it was undermining everything. Anyway, I sent this thing into battle. A fully rigged battleship, a ship of the line. I sent it into battle, guns blazing.
Yeah.
And one of the publisher's principals, the executive of the publisher, bought it that time. And he said, "Oh." And so now that's my 5th book for next year. That'll be out in the second half of the year. And that's the one I really wanted to write. So what I'm saying is you might try, our listeners here might be working on a first book or a first sale or a key piece of business they'd love to have or a trip they wanted to take or, like you climb a mountain or, go down, scuba dive, whatever. You can't be afraid and you can't let obstacles or temporary setbacks cause you harm. You have to charge ahead.
Yeah.
And it's really healthy to get upset and angry and to take it out on someone else.
I love that reaction of just getting angry. Because I think a lot of people, you kind of have the other emotion is, like you kind of lament, you feel sorry for yourself and you're like, like woe is me. Then there's like this kind of offensive, disruptive approach where I'm going to make it so good they cannot resist.
You're right. Fired in the support group. And they say, "Oh, I've been fired too. I'm Alan. I was fired. Hello, Alan." This guy. When I was fired, I just got so damn angry. I said, I will never be fired by a moron again. And that means that I've got to establish my own business, and that's what I'm going to do. So this what might be this great disappointment and this thing that lets the air out of your bag can really serve as fuel to make you go forward. And so, your trip, for example, at these high altitudes and with the, I love what you wrote about. It's not just a hike. It's like you're almost walking vertically uphill. So when you're going to face tough things in the we all do, you're going to remember that hike, I bet, right?
Yeah. That was, especially doing that when you've had 0 sleep and your body is exhausted and then it's just relentless and you see that. And I think I spoke to Tim Stevens was in our group and he said, "I've just realized I've got a new definition of what hard actually is." I think we think hard is like, oh, like it's so hard, but nothing pushes you like my bell curve in terms of hard. It's like moved over quite a few points now. Like I just think what else, like, you can do anything really. So I guess the question is, should we all just climb mountains in 2026? But what if people feel like they're already on the mountain? Like, what would you say to them?
Well, there are only 2 ways for you to go, up or down.
That's true.
You can't stay on the side of the mountain. It's not very healthy. And so you have to go up or down. And it's interesting to me that in Japan and a lot of Asian countries, I'm thinking Indonesia, Malaysia, they're actually building hotels on the side of a cliff. They're actually just rooms, part of the hotel, off the side of the cliff. And they're very thrilling and so forth. But that's meant to be a temporary position, right? A week, maybe, a couple of days. But if you feel you're already on the mountain, the only way to go is up. And one of my very favorite, to keep yourself and to keep things in perspective, one of my favorite lines, the kind of thing I wish I had written, was by a guy named Morris West. He wrote the Shoes of the Fisherman, The Devil's Advocate, a famous author. And one of the novels he wrote was called The Navigator. And in The Navigator, he says the following: "The trouble with the high place is that you don't know whether the voice you hear is God's voice or only the echo of your own mad shouting."
Oh,
Gives you chills.
so good. Yes. And I felt
Oh,
like, without being weird about this, I really felt that.
yeah,
I really felt that.
I'm
Um,
sure.
that in moments of despair, and plus also the self-talk can get quite, when your body's that, destroyed and you haven't had sleep. Yeah, the self-talk was pretty destructive, but it's like, just keep going, and like, kind of, you had to kind of override what was in your own mind. And then it got to a point where I was like, yeah, I actually became at my strongest at 5,000 meters. So that was kind of maybe God speaking to me.
So did you say to yourself, what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, frequently, 2 o'clock in the morning when I couldn't sleep, when um, when I was just absolutely shattered. I had nothing else to give. I honestly thought I had nothing else to give. And I was trying to find a way to get out of the trip. Like, how do I get out of here? But then every day, like, the advice is like, look, just sleep on it. Like, see how you go tomorrow. And you wake up, and what a new day can bring. Honestly, just having a new day is pretty extraordinary. I'm going to go to some comments in a sec, but this is the moment I saw Mount Everest for the first time. So it's just behind me on the left there, and you see it, and you're like, that doesn't look that high when you're actually. So that was pretty amazing. And then Everest Base Camp, it's just this rock. There's just some graffiti on it. I was surprised there was no McDonald's there, actually, but yeah, it felt like we were on Mars at Everest Base Camp. There's no living thing up there, which is extraordinary. So Amy's joining us from her morning train commute into Brisbane. Great to have you here. Paolo has a question. Hi, Leanne. Alan, big fan here. I have a question for Alan. Okay, so we're going to questions, and then we'll go back to the mountain. Alan, what would you say to a company that values more KPIs than results to the client?
I would say the following: if you have clients but no KPIs and the clients are happy, you've got a business. If you have no clients but a lot of KPIs, you don't have a business. And so you always have to keep in mind what your final goal is. So in terms of what you say to them, you say, what about a company that values, and actually, Paolo, these are people valuing this. And so you have to find the people who are the exemplars and the avatars, and you got to get them to change their behavior so people understand this.
Lovely. Great. And thanks, Paolo, for your question. Let us know if you have any more. Alan, you said you can't really stay on the mountain. Your options are you go up or you descend. How do you keep climbing when the air gets thin, when things get tough? You can't breathe.
Well, you get help. In other words, as I understand it, there are records for people who climbed the mountain with help of oxygen and climbed the mountain with no oxygen, which is much dangerous. And I think you use whatever help you need to get. So in terms of writing a book, let's just say that you get a coach to help you with a better proposal. I mean, I run a book sprint where I help people create book proposals. Let's just say that you're trying to learn a new sport. You get somebody who's expert to teach you that sport. I think you also have to keep in mind something you've exemplified, and that is, this is always about success and not perfection. So you admitted your doubts, you recognized your doubts, and you say, well, let's see what the morning brings. And, in worst case, if you had to drop out, you would have still had a wonderful experience. You would have experienced things that you didn't think you were capable of, and life would be enriched. So life is about success, not perfection. There is no top of the mountain, in life.
No, that's the hard thing. And I think you also mentioned, like, there's no there sometimes. And you conquer one mountain, and then that's so easy. Like, when we got to 4,000 meters, I was like, this is so high. Then you get to 5,000 and you're like, wow. The second you get back to 4,000, you just breathe a lot. Like, it's like you're back at sea level. You've just acclimatized so much to that level of challenge.
Life is not a search for meaning. Life is the creation of meaning. And you create your own meaning, and you create your own goals. You create your own challenges. I did a cartoon once where high up on the mountain, there was a dog guru. The guru was a dog. And a dog has climbed up there and finally gets to this ledge where the dog guru is. And the dog guru says to him, my son, I hope to hell you brought me biscuits. He had no advice. He just wanted some food.
Oh, that's great. I love that. I'm a dog guru. We'll have to check that out. Hey, what's the mountain that we should be climbing next year? I know this is probably like, we got to pick our own mountain, and you said we got to create our own meaning. But do you think, in 2026, there's certain things that we should be looking to do?
Well, and I think there are two things. One is that you have to maximize the contribution and the value you can bring to others. Don't focus on money. Don't focus on revenue, on value. If you focus on value, you'll make money. If you focus on money, you're not going to create value, right? You become sort of miserly. You become Scrooge McDuck. The second thing is that since you have to reach out, but you also want people to reach you, okay? The reaching you is about building your brand and creating evangelism. So you have to get people singing your song. You have to get people talking you up, and you have to get people, St. Paul would go to Corinth or Thessalonica or Rome, and he'd talk to 100 people, and he'd say, each one of you go to 100 people. And in 300 years, 90% of Europe was Christian. It staggers the statisticians. But that's what can happen when you have evangelism.
Yeah, evangelism is really powerful. I've also been listening to a podcast on to Acquired have this really great podcast where they have like 4-hour-long episodes that go behind the business. They've done really great episodes on Nike, Porsche. Those two are my favorite. But I'm listening to the Coca-Cola one at the moment. And just a reminder that Coca-Cola still advertises. They've got the strongest brands in the world, and they still do a lot of, events, sponsorship. Marketing is still their number one business, right? It's Coca-Cola.
Well, they have to. It's where you were, especially in Asia, where, I spent a lot of time in Asia too. People, it's generic. People will say, get me a Coke, but they don't mean a Coke. They mean a soda. So Coke becomes synonymous with soda, just like Kleenex became synonymous with tissue. But Kleenex is a brand.
Yeah.
And we say, well, let's Google this, but you're not really using Google at the time. You're using something else. There's a beer called Miller in the U.S., and they had a deal. It's Miller time at around 5 o'clock. But people would say, it's Miller time. Let's go have a bud.
Have a Corona. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't blame Coke. They've got to distinguish themselves as that particular soda provider. By the way, for years and years and years when Coke was founded, and the formula is still secret, contained narcotic.
Yes, I know. Yeah, it actually had cocaine leaves.
Yes.
And they got the cocoa from Africa, and yeah, it's a fascinating story. It was actually a medicine. It was a pharmaceutical drug before they decided to switch markets and open up to the general population. So
they claim it cured everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. Like I tell you what, I drank after my little breakdown because you can't get enough calories in your system. So I was drinking like 2 bottles of Coke every day. I don't drink it at all, but Coke and Snickers bars got me through. So yeah. Paolo shares, this is so enlightful. Leanne, huge thanks from Brazil. You bring so much value along with Alan. It's great. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Paolo, I've been to Rio, of course, but I've also been to Sao Paulo back in the day before they redid it. And going back to what Leanne said earlier, Sao Paulo had one of the most dangerous airports I've ever seen. You actually landed between the skyscrapers.
Oh.
And so, the pilot had his gear down. And if you look to your left or right, you could see people working in offices. It was pretty cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Like it's like a major city, right? So,
it's a financial center of the country.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think Wellington Airport in New Zealand is probably the other really hairy airport. I don't know if you've flown in there. It's like so windy. I don't know if you've seen footage. Like there's these planes like just rocking. It's terrifying. You talked about building a brand before, and in terms of that, like, what is the part that can get us unstuck with doing that? Because I mean, the results of building a brand are so great. People come to you, but are people scared of like the visibility, the rejection, the responsibility when you're in the public square? What do you sense from the people that you work with? What holds them back from brand building?
Ego, fragility.
Really?
Yeah, they're their own worst enemies. They're afraid that somebody will critique them. They're afraid that somebody will say they're wrong. They're afraid that they won't be perfect. And we stop ourselves. That's why I'm writing this book, The Courage of Your Talent. And, people have to get tapped to understand that some of the greatest talents in the world were heavily criticized. They have to understand that, without critique, nobody's listening to you. So if people are critiquing you, they're paying attention to you. And that's no publicity is bad publicity, as long as I'm mentioning my name. And so you cannot be afraid. You've got to step out there and you've got to say, look, here's my best shot. Here's what I think. And you have to be able to back it up. So, my feeling is I don't do research. There are people like Dan Pink and Malcolm Gladwell who are scientific writers that do all the research. That's people like Seth Godin and me and Marshall Goldsmith who are anecdotal writers. And so since I don't research, I use social proof. And I'm always looking for examples to prove my point. And if you can prove your point and other people can see it, you're home free. So you need to build your brand so people will come to you and there's no cost of acquisition.
Yeah. The critique thing is really interesting because I think, early on, I don't really mind I'm in the public square a lot now. Like, I don't really mind at all. I was talking to my friend Jade yesterday. So I'm writing my next book for next year and just thinking around, like, my approach is like experimentation over ego. Like, I just like experimenting, seeing what lands. And I detach from whatever's going to come to that. But I think we think people are going to critique it, but they don't actually do. Like, a lot of people don't care. Critique is good because at least they're paying attention. Like, at least you've got eyeballs on your stuff. If you're not even getting critiqued probably the hardest challenge is even getting cut through at the moment when there's so much noise out there.
Yeah, the big proof of what you just talked about is when I got fired and I wrote an article, I had to stand out in the crowd. And so I wrote an article for a Boston magazine that took on quality circles, which were very big. People had black belts in quality and, down to the smallest tolerance. I said, quality circles, are ridiculous. They don't work. They undermine productivity. So the guy publishes it, and then picture Frankenstein. The villagers came up with torches and pitchforks, and they besieged this magazine publisher. And so I called to apologize. I was in my 20s. I called to apologize. And he said, kid, I want you to write an article every month. I'll give you $50 a month. I said, they hated it. He said, they read it. And that's when I understood. And so I was contrarian forever after.
Yes. And you've got a brand around contrarian consulting. And I think that suits your brand. I don't know if that's my brand. I'm kind of like happy-go-lucky. Maybe I will push people and challenge things, but are they different? What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, I have to be comfortable with your brand, so no argument there.
Yeah.
But you also stand out proud. You do not have a brand if you're in the herd. You have to be up on the mountaintop. No pun intended, but you have to be up on the mountain.
Yeah.
And so, your brand could be the mountain climber. Your brand could be, dare it and do it. But I think the issue is that you, especially in these days, you have to be able to stand out in a crowd, and so you have to tell people something that is immensely interesting or challenging or provocative or whatever. So, like I'm saying lately to people, look, AI is not taking over the world. AI is underutilized. You're not using enough of it. And I make my point about that because people use it as an encyclopedic resource. What's this date? What's this time?
Yeah.
Instead of mapping out strategies with it.
And that's the thing. Like, I think I've even noticed a shift in content. So, like, even maybe 3 to 5 years ago, what used to work well was, hey, here are 5 things you can do if blah, 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 like those listicles. But now, like, ChatGPT can roll that out in 5 seconds. And so it's actually really about the personal approach. Like, here's how I climbed the mountain. Like, because there's like the individual is attached to the advice. So, yeah, I've noticed that's changed as well. What other?
Sorry to interrupt. Your story is more interesting when you talk about when you had your doubts, when you said, how can I get out of here? The next morning it was fresh. The sanitary facilities were appalling. Because that happens to a lot of us in different ways that we don't admit. We just want to say, hey, we filled our KPI, to use Paolo's phrase.
Yeah.
We got to this point. But the fact that people hear you say that and realize in their own lives, that's what's really the contribution, right? It almost is irrelevant, the height that you reached on the mountain. The learning that other people have from your trip, that's the key.
That's interesting. But that also marries into what you were talking before about the ego fragility. Like, people aren't willing to admit those thoughts.
Well, and they're easily challenged. I mean, somebody comes to me and says, I read your book, there are 7 typos. I said, no, there are 14. Go back. So That's how you defend your ego. That's how you take care of those things. You don't get, guy points to my rolls. I'm coming out of a restaurant. He says, "Is that your rolls?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "There's a little scratch over here." I said, "I'll buy a new one tomorrow."
Oh gosh. That is that's such a Rolls type of response, actually. That's totally on brand, actually, for you and the car. That
Yeah, I don't take
response.
crap,
Now, 2026, what have you got on, and how do we climb higher? We're listening to this, we're like, yes, I want to climb another mountain, I want to get higher. What should we focus on?
Well, what I've got on is I'm going to be in London in May. I'm doing a program based on my book in February, The Seven Figure Consultant. And then I'm doing an elite group in London too for people already making seven figures. So one is for people who want to, the other seven figures. I've got a new newsletter starts January 15th, which is called the No Normal Newsletter. Which is a trademark phrase I have. And there are three categories in it. I'm going to be talking about what I see and what I hear and what I'm putting together that other people don't and what you should be aware of. So my mantra is people tell you when you hear hoofbeats, assume horses. And I'm saying, no, assume zebras. That's the
Really? You're thinking that we have to, so basically don't assume anything is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's right. And I just finished yesterday my 2025 Zoom series, my monthly series. So January starts my 2026 Zoom series when I'm looking at maximizing every aspect. In other words, maximizing your time in the buyer's office, maximizing referrals, maximizing expansion business, and so forth and so on.
It's exciting. And I mean, you're doing a lot. You've already planned out a lot of your 2026. Question for you before I go back to this one, but so I love Thailand. I go to Bangkok every year. It's the number plate on my car. I'm that obsessed with this city. I would love to work there. What should I be doing to get work over there?
Well, you should be publishing there. People generally like opinion from other countries than their own.
Mm.
So, my recollection of Thailand is a lot of English-speaking publications and opportunities. And so I would publish there. I would perhaps do some videos that could be used there on YouTube. And I would talk about things that you normally talk about, but using examples very pertinent to Thailand. I would not do this until the border dispute is over.
Okay. It's all right.
Because people are totally distracted by this.
Are they? I don't know.
There's 100,000 people who have been displaced so far.
Yes, I know. I know. In Bangkok, though, it seemed. I know this. Going on a side note here. This is the Cambodia dispute. The travel warning was escalated actually from the Australian government a couple of days ago. I don't know. Bangkok seems to just kind of just. It seems a little bit separate from stuff like that. But I will take point taken. I will be very careful.
Okay.
Okay, and for those listeners and viewers today, any thoughts on what they should focus on to get to high altitudes next year?
Well, it all begins with yourself. In this business, we're solo practitioners, most of us. And so we need to invest in ourselves. So I would say that you have to build your brand, as I spoke about earlier. You have to look to expand your vistas. In other words, if you're working with small business, work with larger businesses. If you're working in one country, look to work in another country that's similar enough. Like, you love Thailand and you're very familiar with it.
Mm.
If you're in Australia, there's no reason not to work in New Zealand, for God's sake. So, except for the trip.
Kiwis don't like that. Okay.
I'll offend someone. But look, when you boil it all the way, there are two keys to leadership next year, including self-leadership. One is agility and the second is resilience. And so the reason I talk about no normal is there's going to be constant change.
Mm.
That's the way. So you have to be agile and take advantage of that. And then the resilience is that you're going to face setbacks. You're going to face difficulties, but you have to bounce forward. You can't go back and form a defensive line.
Mm.
And so, okay, I'm going to overcome this and then be better off because of it. So agility and resilience.
Yeah, really. And that sort of links to the first theme of your story around getting rejected for that book that you're really excited about, going into battle, and now look at this. It's happening next year. 5 books next year. I'm just happy to do one. So that's extraordinary. Alan, thank you so much for 2025 talking the walk. It's been always so much fun.
Well, we had a great time, and thank you to everybody who listens and watches either now or later. And I'm glad we're going to do it again next year, right? January, we're on.
Yeah, January, I think 10th and 11th. It's in our calendar. We'll promote it. But we'll be back next year on your LinkedIn and YouTube feeds. Thanks for listening. I don't have my end screen prompted here, so we'll just do a big toast. And
Okay.